Broadcaster Chat. I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler with the Lansing Lugnuts, although repping the Brockton Rocks here today. Joined by Mick Gillispie of the Tennessee Smokies, repping the Chicago Cubs, and Kevin Reichard. Kevin, no baseball cap on, but representing Ballpark Digest itself. And Kevin, we've got the Best of the Ballparks vote is coming up soon.
The Best of the Ballparks vote is coming up tomorrow. We get a lot of interest in the industry, obviously, about it because everyone wants to rep their ballpark as being the best in their major leagues. We've already done the the spring training vote, which ended up having about twice as many votes as normal. That was won by the Tigers and Salt River Fields. And we're going to start tomorrow with low A ballparks. And that's across the Sally and Midwest leagues. So that'll be prominent on the site. I expect to see a lot of attention, especially from board social media managers who need to fill up their social media feeds with lots of information. So go Cooley Law Stadium.
You say low A. As someone who works for a low A team, we say single A. And those guys up there are just advanced.
Well, yeah, I know. Maybe we should change it at some point, but that's a lot of work, and we like low A. So it's been, short season A, low A, high A.
Kevin, how many years has this been for the Best of the Ballparks vote?
This has been the 6th year now, and every time we hit a new high in terms of votes, each round will receive between 40,000 and 120,000 participants during the course of the vote. Some people will vote every day. Some will just vote once, depending on their loves. Low A last year did pretty well. Independent did the best last year, which was the first time that ever happened. Normally, AAA gets the most amount of participants.
A little bit unusual, isn't it, that there are teams who've poured money in new stadiums, renovated stadiums, and stadiums aren't being used right now?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if people react. I mean, on the one hand, we sort of had an internal debate over whether to do it this year with no baseball, but I don't want to be a sad sack kind of person. So we decided to move forward with the vote anyway. And, teams could use a little shot down to it. So good for the industry, good for us. And it's a lot of fun. And the fans do love it. They love these rivalries, especially when you end up with unintentionally, by the way, end up with a real regional rivalry, like a Clinton versus Quad Cities, for instance. That actually gins up a lot of interest. So we're looking forward to the low A competition starting tomorrow, and then this runs through the middle of July. We'll do the 4 full season leagues, and then we'll look at when we start summer collegiate and short season, depending on circumstances, as we know.
Sounds good. Mick, how are your current circumstances?
Pretty good. Still hanging out here in Fairhope, working on a book, which, I've talked to you about before. So I'm in chapter 2 of the first draft, realizing that I'm not a great author yet, but trying to get there. And, enjoying the water, like I'm right on the Mobile Bay. I can see Mobile from here, from where I'm sitting in Fairhope. We've got down to the beach a little bit, hoping that baseball starts back up, but as long as it's not playing, then I'm having a good time doing this, and trying to keep up with everything. Kevin, I got a question for you. Have you ever thought about doing a vote? I mean, maybe not every year, but doing a vote for the worst ballpark? Because I know as broadcasters, we love the good ones and we love to talk about the bad ones. Although I'm sure that the worst ballpark winner probably wouldn't want to be the worst ballpark winner. Maybe they would. I don't know.
This popped up when we did a college vote a few years ago, and what happened was, I won't name the major SEC university that just gave us a ton of credit they were trying to raise money for a new facility, and but the vote ended up really well because their fans loved the atmosphere at the old ballpark, and the athletic department refused to participate after a while. They just, in fact, I got a nasty email from an assistant AD saying, we're trying to raise money for this project. How dare you gum up the works? And it's like, okay. So, on the one hand, I know when we say nasty things about a ballpark, that's ammunition for an owner to walk in and say, look, at this industry source says we have a crap ballpark, we need money. And, we also do the rankings, and there have been, a few cases where a team being bottom of the rankings turned that around and said, yeah, our ballpark sucks, we really need a new one. Now, as a marketing strategy, that's really mixed. You got to put up with a year or two of pain before the new ballpark happens. But in the long run, I can point to several renovated and new ballparks where our votes were used as ammunition for public participation in funding and approval.
Yeah, there's definitely a way to turn it into a positive.
What are your worst ballparks, by the way? We could talk about that.
Yeah. Well, I think the worst one to me was Potomac, when I was in the Carolina League. I mean, that was just a complete joke there. I felt bad that the guys even had to play in that facility, and they kept promising a new ballpark. Somebody said they're actually getting a new ballpark. Is that true? I mean, I haven't been out of that league. They are, so they have a new ballpark now?
The team is moving to Fredericksburg, and actually tomorrow we have an interview set up with Seth Silber and his crew about the new ballpark in Fredericksburg, and we'll be running a preview like in a couple weeks.
Okay, so it took them like 15 years then, because they were going to get a new ballpark when I was doing games way back in the day. That place was terrible. Unfortunately, Huntsville, when they were in Joe Davis Stadium, Jesse, you remember that place. That was just a garbage pit there, but they left, and now they've got another team that has a stadium. And then I'm looking at Mobile. I got to throw Mobile in there, and it's not that the stadium was terrible, like Huntsville and Potomac are kind of the same, just a disaster. The thing that was bad about Mobile is that the design was awful, and I understand why. They had a shortage of money, I guess, in the project, and they built the stadium, in my opinion, in a way where you were never going to be able to make money, because they had the stands high and they had the luxury boxes low, and you had to walk up really high concrete stairs to get to the second level, but there was nowhere to buy anything up there. So they made it very difficult for people to buy stuff. And in this business, it's all about selling, whether you're selling advertising or you're selling concessions or, the tickets. And so you're way high, you were hot, the view wasn't great. And, and I guess for whatever, 6 million or whatever, that's what you get. But I mean, it was like the stadium wasn't great the day it opened, from what I understand. I wasn't in the league, but I got there not too long after it opened. And I just would look at it and go, this is a beautiful city. I love Mobile. This isn't going to work. And obviously that team's moved on. So those are the three. Now, there was also one other one. When I was in the Coastal Plain League, I did games from Wilson, which was a really nice old baseball stadium. It was great. But there was a team in that league that played in, what was that? Somewhere in South Carolina. I can't remember the city, but anyway, it was terrible. It was like it was a wood press box, and it didn't have air conditioning, and it didn't have a window that opened. And it would be, I mean, literally like 110, 115. Like you would feel like you were going to die in that press box. I'm going to think about the name of it, and I'll tell you. But I just remember going there, and it was like, and there were a lot of stadiums in that league that were, kind of maybe a touch above a high school facility that weren't great. And there were some okay ones in there too. This has been a while now, but I remember that one being pretty bad. How about you, Jesse?
When I was in the Frontier League, the stadiums that were good stood out. because a Traverse City or Southern Illinois, you enjoyed going there in comparison to so many of the other stadiums. But because it was independent baseball, you want to win. Being inconvenienced by a terrible clubhouse, having to walk however far, having a terrible road hotel, all those different things, those were great things for the home team. The worse the other team was, the more you just laughed at them, and then you, as the team that was inconvenienced, you thought of ways that you could inconvenience them. It was really a great game of gamesmanship. Being in the Midwest League, the team that has long had that reputation has been Beloit, which is why everybody has been so enthused to see the plans for their new stadium.
Yeah, it's going to be a nice place. It's going to be downtown, and I think we discussed this before, but it is the result of some charity in the form of Diane Hendricks, who's from the area, who made her money running a supply company with her husband out of the area. Is using this as a development for the downtown area, and she's spent a lot of money in downtown development in Beloit as it is, and this will be another part of that. Downtown Beloit's really pretty. You know, it's a rock river city, and got a lot of. And it's not the biggest or best of markets, but you know, with the new ballpark, I'm sure it'll be in much better shape. And whatever team will be there, whether it's the Snappers or whatever Major League Baseball decides will be the name, along with Quint Studer, it'll be a definite upgrade. And then that sort of leaves, you know, a few other ballparks in that league, you know, not the greatest still. And you see them much more than I do, Jesse, I'm sure.
Yes. Beloit, for those who have not seen it, you come in through the gates, and it's in a nice suburban neighborhood. There are houses all around. And as you're coming in, that's where the team's front office is. So the front office, the temporary, the structure, it connects with the two clubhouses. You come in, and immediately there's the concourse. There's the concessions. There's the retail store. The retail store is actually underneath the stands themselves. So you've got the stands in front of you, you've got the front office behind you as you walk through, and the players, because the clubhouse is part of that building that the front office connects to, they have to walk through the concourse and through the fans in order to get to their dugout for the visitors on the first base side. So the players will use the crowd's bathrooms. There's the bathroom down the right side. Everywhere the players go, that whole travel, they're fans. And then here come the stands right on up. And there's our press box, which is at the top of the stands. It really is a sort of spot. It was built in the early 1980s. And you feel like you're walking into a snapshot of, this was what all those major leaguers, all those former minor leaguers, all those veterans, when they talk about minor league baseball in my day, it just has felt like it has not changed since the 1980s.
Yeah. And the ballpark designs themselves, I think the worst era for like building stadiums was 70s and 80s. You know, you go all the way to the major leagues, you look at some of the stadiums built in the 70s and 80s, they just didn't, same thing, Huntsville was built in like 1984, talking about Joe Davis Stadium. I guarantee you that the one in Potomac was built then, that was so bad. There's just certain stadiums that were built then that just didn't hold up the test of time. You know, like the ones that were built since Camden Yards in the 90s have been, they're gonna be a beauty for years to come. You know, even some of the ones that are old, like Chattanooga's wanting to get a new stadium. Theirs was built in 2000. It still looks cool. They just used materials that are falling apart, but the actual design is neat. You know, it's not like when you go to Joe Davis Stadium and, you know, you're looking around and it's just boring. You know, it's like just, and it reminds me of like all the stadiums. Yeah, all those stadiums from back then, you know, in the big leagues and stuff. You know, it was like, what happened? We would go from Forbes Field to this, you know, Three Rivers, and it's like round and big and not much personality, you know. And then now they're being built and they look great. But then you go back further, and it's like Wrigley and Fenway and old, you know, Tiger Stadium and like all those stadiums, like even the ones that don't exist now, were cool. They just, for whatever reason, their purpose kind of ran out on them. And let me say this: it was Florence in the Coastal Plain League that had that press box. It just, for anyone that's out there, Florence, South Carolina, that was a bad stadium.
I was going to say Florence or Anderson. One of those two.
Have I told you the story of where the clubhouses are located in Florence, Kentucky, or at the very least they were back in the day for our team?
No.
You had to go up the road. So you had to go around the center field wall and up the hill and down the road. And so we got caught in a terrible rainstorm, and the players were clearing the dugout to try to get up to the clubhouse. And I'm watching from the broadcast booth as all these guys are running across the field, and all the guys are running up the hill. It was a stitch for me to watch, and then I had to make the same run myself. Mick, about those eras of ballpark construction, I'm fascinated by them, because you had the super stadium era. What you're talking about with the 70s, that's called the cookie cutter era. All those cookie cutter stadiums where every single one was a clone. And thank goodness we've broken out of that.
Awful. Although I say that, and then, Memorial Stadium was built in the 50s, but it kind of it looked a lot like the clones, right? But I thought it was a special place. I enjoyed going to games there. There were some, it definitely wasn't conducive to making money. And I'm sure, the accommodations weren't great. I thought the location was good. It's not better than, being down on, in the Inner Harbor, but whatever. I mean, but Three Rivers and the ones in Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, I mean, like all these different places, you're right. They were exactly the same. And I love the fact that even in the minor leagues, stadiums since Camden Yards, I really feel like Camden Yards was kind of the rebirth of doing things like that and making the stadium like, different and unique, and, kind of an art piece, right? A showpiece anyway. Even in the minor leagues, they're like that. You talk about Beloit getting a new stadium. I didn't realize Quint Studer was part of that. Great guy. He's done a fantastic job with Pensacola. And I'll say this about Pensacola. You take the stadium in Mobile that they just lost their team. If they put that same stadium down by the water, I don't think people are paying as much attention to how hot it is, right? Say this thing was on Dauphin Street and they had the view that I have right now of Mobile Bay, but just on the other side of the bay. You're not paying as much attention to, hey, look, I got to go down and get the concession stand and this and that. And the reason I say that is that Pensacola, if you look at the stadium, if you go in the outfield and look forward, it really isn't anything special. It's a nice stadium, but not going to blow your socks off. You can tell where they wanted more suites and didn't have the money for them. And it's just like kind of like a group area, which looks cool, right? But nothing fantastic. But when you turn around and you look at the view that you have, and you've got water on, between both foul poles, right? And you've got the view of, of across the bay, and you can see, Gulf Breeze over there and all those places. And the way that the sun sets and the Blue Angels flying over, everything else that goes with it, the amphitheater that's past the outfield wall, that makes it what it is. It's brilliant. And you get in there and then you realize, like, you know what? I don't even care what the stadium looks like. I'm watching the field, which is fantastic. And I'm looking at the dimensions, which are cool. And then the out view, of the water. So it's a fantastic stadium. And at the same time, it's pretty normal, right?
Yeah, you got to look at the ballpark. Remember, that ballpark was built for independent ball originally, designed. Mm-hmm. And when Quint made the decision to move his team up and nabbed affiliated ball, they put additional money into clubhouses and player facilities. So the actual concourse and grandstand are fairly close to what was going to be an independent team. And it always was going to be the view of the bay. And but that's why you don't have a fancier suite situation, because that all went into player facilities. And right now, the Reds loved being there. The Twins love being there because the clubhouses really are big and spacious and exceed minor league expectations.
Yeah, and I love it too.
Mick, You mentioned Oriole Park at Camden Yards, and let's tie that together with Pensacola. You mentioned location.
Mm-hmm.
When teams started to realize it's about where the ballpark is as much as it is about what the ballpark is. So instead of putting a ballpark in the middle of nowhere and surrounding it by parking lots, incorporating the warehouse, or incorporating the bridges and the three rivers, incorporating the water back behind, that idea of the stadium can also have the personality of the city was such an enormous development.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, when you look back, and I don't want to give the Orioles all the credit, even though it was really brilliant to do it at the time. As I swat a couple of bugs out here on the porch.
They're out here too.
Yeah, right. I'll swing and give you guys a view before we get out of here. But anyway, that's how they used to do it. I mean, we talk about this all the time. If you could go back and check out a game from the 1920s, are you going to the Polo Grounds, or are you going to you want to see the Dodgers? You want to see when Yankee Stadium opened up, and the way that those stadiums were they're part of the community. Like they're like, hey, look, this is like Wrigley. You get that same feel there. You go to the North Side, and it's like, hey, man, it's in Wrigleyville, near Ravenwood, near Uptown, like Riverview. Like, we're all here. This is our team. You go to the Sox, and it's like, hey, we're South Side, and we're in the South Side, and the stadium itself kind of has that feel, like you watch a Cubs game, and they'll flash over, and it's like there's some sailboats out in the lake, and it's like, oh yeah, and then here comes the pitch. Love that. I think that's what makes baseball, because I don't really feel like NFL stadiums are anything other than just a place to play. Whereas like baseball stadium, like the actual stadium itself, the dimensions of the fence, where it's located, like you have time during the event to take in the whole thing. And you're right. I mean, I'm glad that we got back to that. I've heard from people besides Camden Yards, like it's like if you go to Pittsburgh, well, you got to go to PNC, just the best, right? Or if you're in San Francisco, you got to go to AT&T. You just got to do it. It's just the best, and when people travel, part of the checklist is like, hey, I went to a game there. I tried the local craft beer or the local food, and I got a chance to sit there. And it's like you're kind of being, when you're there as a guest, it's like you're kind of like, it's like going to that local bar and that local restaurant that as a visitor you want to try, so that you can experience what it's like there for the locals. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And that's why, you look at when we'll do our major league vote, whenever we decide that the season is going to start, there really aren't many bad major league ballparks left anymore. Mm-hmm. Toronto, I haven't been there in a couple of years. When I went there the first time, it was just all brutalist concrete everywhere. It was a charm of, an industrial warehouse. And now with the new Texas ballpark, I'm of the opinion, by the way, that the old Texas ballpark sucked. The hottest I've ever been in my life was an opening day there. And I decided mistakenly to head to the stands to see what was going on. And after an inning, I put on SPF 55 suntan lotion and had a hat on. I still was sweating like a pig and getting sunburned. And so I am not sad at all to see that ballpark go away. I'm ready to see a little relief in the stands there. But you're right. It's like going to the hometown bar now. It's a local experience, and I think people sort of take that for granted, because you don't get that much in the NFL. I mean, you do. I mean, the Viking Stadium is like that, and Lambeau is as scrawny as it gets. But the new Soldier Field, maybe not the most charming of venues, to be totally honest. Ford Field, not the most charming of venues. But that's where baseball has the advantage.
I'll speak up for Toronto, just because when the roof is open and you see the CN Tower rising, I love stadiums that are right in the thick of their downtown area. I had never been to San Diego before going for the winter meeting some years back.
Oh,
And I loved how the Padres have incorporated their stadium into downtown. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I wonder what's going to happen. There's some teams I worry about that the city and the team, they're missing the opportunity to take advantage of Major League Baseball. And I wonder, like, when you talk about Oakland, is Oakland going to get the stadium? Unfortunate that the Giants have blocked them from San Jose, something that I felt like baseball should have stepped in and done something about, like for the game, right? To have them in a better spot, Tampa Bay, they can't support baseball. I mean, it's just plain and simple. I mean, they just can't, It's a good city, but it's small. But there's places like Nashville and Charlotte and other spots like the Midwest. I feel like, Oklahoma City, maybe, like that could really, like, you watch the NBA and you watch the NFL, they're so much better at seizing growing markets and being ahead of the curve. And I feel like baseball is like so far behind. It's like we sit there and wait until, you get a situation like Oakland where it's like, man, you feel bad for this organization because it's run so well, right? But without a stadium, it just doesn't work, right? The revenues aren't good enough. You're not able to pay players. You watch them just draft guys and then send them off. It's like they're kind of like the 4A team for like the big markets, right? Somehow they still compete. And then you got other places like, Nashville, a place I'm at a lot. I promise you, Nashville would be a great spot for Major League Baseball. Just would. Las Vegas, put them there. I think it would be great too.
Mick, what an interesting question in terms of if you erased all the major league teams and you said, we're going to put a team wherever there is a thriving, growing, wealthy city, a city that is just ready, what cities would have teams?
And which wouldn't have teams? But look at Green Bay. I'm sorry, Kevin.
No, go ahead.
Green Bay in the NFL is the exception to the rule, and maybe Buffalo too. It's like when they got the teams, and all they do is support the teams, and they go and they're proud of those teams, and it's a part of the community, and I think that's what it's all about. But then you look at Tampa Bay and Oakland, it's like, it's not working. Whether we want it to work or not, and for whatever reason, and I know Oakland, there's a lot of political reasons there. I mean, just it's impossible to build housing, let alone a stadium. But they need a new stadium, and if they don't get it, people aren't showing up, and people aren't showing up because of the stadium, not because of the team.
Yeah, the economics of baseball though are so different than the NBA. NBA 41 games, 18,000 fans a game. That's a huge success.
Right.
If you had a Major League Baseball team averaging 15,000 fans a game or less, they'd be a failure, which in Tampa Bay and Oakland they are. So, I think you're absolutely right. I think there's some great markets out there. I think Portland actually is the best market out there right now. Nashville, I'm not as hep on, mainly because there's already MLS and NFL there. That's a hard. Being the third or fourth team in that market is going to be really hard, especially when NHL and NFL are pretty successful. So you're going to be competing a lot with those entities. Portland, you got kind of a clear route. Charlotte, maybe, although with the NFL about to work with the Panthers on a new stadium, there's about $1 billion that'll be out of the market for building new facilities there. So, it's all individual circumstances. And Montreal, I think, is actually primed.
Yeah, that whole notion of, let's take the Green Bay Packers, where people can come in from all around the state every time that there's a home game. It has the feel of a college football game, where just people come from all over because that's the game. And baseball, if you really do want to pack it in night after night after night, specifically 3-4 nights in a row, then you need to ease the traffic. You need to make it very easy for especially the same crowds, the same people, to come in and make it a convenient daily experience for them.
Yeah, I don't know if you can extrapolate anything for the Packers, because what gets lost a lot is the fact that even though for the Green Bay Packers. They sold 2 sets of season tickets, and they played half their games in Green Bay, half in Milwaukee. And I think Milwaukee actually, they made more money, mainly because Milwaukee had County Stadium or the fairgrounds before that as a place to play with large crowds. So Green Bay is kind of an accident of history that was promulgated because Tim Mara and his fellow owners decided to divvy up the revenues equally in the 60s. So you'll never see anything like that happen again today. Although I love Green Bay and Lambeau, it's an accident of history.
Kevin, you say we'll never see anything like that again. Tampa wants to split time with Montreal.
That is the worst plan ever. Just settle on one or the other and go for it. I'm more bullish on Tampa than Mick is, I think, mainly because I think it's an underserved market in some ways, and the plan for where they want to build the ballpark actually pretty good for the city overall. It helps out development all around downtown Tampa. But we'll see whether the split concept works very well if it's ever implemented. My guess is it never will get implemented.
Yeah, and I hope it's not. I mean, to me, that just seems like garbage. Look, if either have a team or don't have a team. If Montreal is a better spot for a team, then let them build the stadium and support the team and have a team. I mean, people like baseball in Montreal. You talk to former Expo players, and they want that team back. The Jeff Faceros of the world, my buddy, he said, hey, you know what? I would love to see Montreal have a team back. And their fans, they had one of those cookie cutter stadiums that we talked about. They didn't have a great stadium. They showed up, and then the strike came, and they were the team to beat that year. And it's really hard when you're talking about a history of a team that's never been to the World Series and you feel like you have your best shot and it's taken away because of, really of greed. For fans to get back behind it, and baseball's got to be careful with that exact problem now. We don't need to talk about it, but I mean, if they think that they're going to put dollars ahead of the game, they're playing a very dangerous game with the sport, and Montreal is a great example of that.
Here's how we'll talk about it right now. We're coming off Memorial Day weekend. First Memorial Day since 1880 that there hasn't been baseball. And different holidays belong to different sports. If it's Christmas Day, it's basketball. If it's Thanksgiving, it's football. Baseball, throughout the course of the spring and summer, baseball is Labor Day weekend. Baseball is the 4th of July. Baseball's Father's Day and Mother's Day. And baseball is Memorial Day. Memorial Day is spent either at cemeteries honoring those who've given their lives in the armed forces, or it's spent at the ballpark. And so especially coming off Memorial Day, coming off the memories that I have, and I'm interested to hear what you two think, I think about the solemn color guard, I think about the national anthem, and this is when I'm someone who gets irked by God Bless America at every single game, but this is when I expect to hear God Bless America. Memorial Day without baseball got me really thinking.
Yeah, it was a sad day. I was thinking about it too yesterday, and I was half-heartedly working and going, oh gosh. This is when I remember we go to the Memorial Day parade in the morning. The day before, we put the flowers at the graves, and then the afternoon we'd turn on the radio and listen to Herb Carneal call the game. That was just a Memorial Day tradition. And that's just was taken from us.
Yeah, the Smokies do a fantastic, they've got a fantastic Memorial Day tradition, where they do like a special event at the stadium where they honor the families of fallen heroes, and they'll have them out there, Gold Star mothers. And it's amazing, like the players go out, they give them a rose, like they line them up on the field. I mean, Memorial Day is a baseball. It's a baseball weekend, the Cubs with the camouflage hat and then the stars on it, and really a reflection of our country and our national pastime. I miss the game a lot. I missed the
I was
game a
surprised.
lot.
Yeah.
Shocked, man. I'm shocked that we're not playing, or we don't know when we're playing yet.
I was surprised there wasn't more commentary about that among our leading baseball pundits this past weekend. And it seems like they all collectively took the weekend off because they got the signal Major League Baseball wasn't doing anything anyway. So here. But boy, there should have been more tributes. On Twitter, you saw some regarding, the ballparks that had memorials after World War I and World War II, Memorial Stadium.
Yeah.
Mentioned War Memorial in Buffalo.
Eddie
Right.
Grant, the players who actually died serving.
Yeah. And there was, and I feel kind of bad we didn't cover it more on our end. And that's something that we'll have to make sure to put on the calendar for next year to make sure to acknowledge those people.
Well, the whole association of baseball and the United States of America, right? Intertwined. It's baseball, it's apple pie, it's the national pastime. Baseball really does, by and large, get the American holidays. The holidays in the off season are not, there's President's Day, there's MLK Day, there's Veterans Day, but Memorial Day and 4th of July, and when you talk about thinking about our country as you're taking this holiday, this is what they are. And when you're looking for a way to spend your time and spend your day, what should you do with your family, whether it's listening or watching or attending? It's baseball.
Yeah. And go ahead.
No, I don't know about the two of you either. It's now hot here in Lansing, Michigan. It is now summer. It is exactly what I would expect to be putting on sunscreen and getting ready for some time under the sun.
And that's exactly what I was going to say before I rudely interrupted you. Memorial Day is the beginning of summer. It's going to be the hottest day of the year so far here. I don't know if my Max microphone is good enough to hear literally when you were saying that the air conditioner kicked on outside the window. So we've got that running. And so it kind of feels like we've lost summer a little bit, despite the hot temperatures. We've all been homebound and all been sort of stir crazy. Watching Korean baseball was fun. And I think we're going to see some made for TV summer collegiate stuff coming up. But until we see real Major League Baseball on the field, it won't really feel like summer.
Well, I would expect that there's going to be an increasing sense of urgency among the people who want to put out a Major League season. Because after this, it's Father's Day and it's the 4th of July. It is June right around the corner, and we know that they want to have baseball for July.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be hard, just the player test. When you have a 67-page manual to cover player safety, like Major League Baseball presented to the Players Association, maybe you should rethink that strategy a little bit, because we're not back to normal.
No.
And baseball coming back, people will feel like it, but it's just almost too soon. I was more optimistic about baseball coming back last week than I am now, quite honestly. I think it's going to be a really hard sell. NBA can do it at Disney World because you're running camps. You just camps with real scores. Baseball, you can't do that very well unless you stick to Arizona and Florida. And 106 degrees in Phoenix this weekend? Yeah, let's go play baseball. Let's play two.
Have you heard any of the stories of the catching equipment that gets fused together by the heat?
Yes.
Well, it's going to be exciting to see these teams that are getting rid of their rookie affiliates and moving the games to Arizona, because it's going to be hot. They're going to want to be in Johnson City and Elizabethton and all those places that they're taking those teams away from, because in the middle of summer in Arizona, it's a lot different than when you're there in March and February. But I think for baseball, I've been kind of pessimistic, knowing all the obstacles that they have to get through to play. I'm more optimistic now. I know they have the big manual, and they're trying to figure out how to do it. I don't know how they're going to do it. But I feel like if the reason why they don't play is because of the money, that the sport's gonna be in big trouble. That's the point I was making about Montreal. And I'm not saying who's right or who's wrong. I mean, the players' union is the one that's not doing too well right now as far as fan opinion goes. With this whole thing. But I don't know. Like the crazy thing to me is that teams want to play these games in their empty home stadium. It's like, why would you? I mean, you have to play them in Arizona and Florida because that's just if the virus is, if you're that concerned about the virus and you're saying, well, if that's what we're worried about, then if you're going to play in an empty stadium, why wouldn't you play at Sloan Park and Maryvale and all those other places that are close by where you're not traveling? If one person has it on a plane, I'm sure a lot of people are going to catch it if that's what you're worried about. I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong, but
I agree.
No, I'm totally with you. But fighting about money, if this ends up being a fight about money, Major League Baseball is going to be in a bad state for the rest of the year because you are going to see the draft, trimmed down to 5 rounds.
Yeah.
We're going to see the top prospects going, you know what? I think I would rather play in Japan for $1 million than $20,000 for Major League Baseball. And you know what? I'll stay there for 4 years, and then Major League Baseball can bid for my services. So the heck with you guys. I love Japan. So and then the minor league kerfuffle is going to come out at some point. Losing 42 teams. It's going to be a terrible summer for Major League Baseball if they don't get off to the right foot now.
I mean, honestly, I hope it is. I mean, I'm so just tired of some of these bad decisions that we've seen the game take here in the last years, couple years, like the juice ball. We talk about it right now is the worst time that I can remember baseball having juice baseballs. And then they lied to us and tried to tell us that the baseball wasn't juiced. And it's obvious that it is. And the players know it. And then anytime anyone steps up and says anything, like the commissioner's office, closes in on them, to shut that down. The closing these teams that have been in these markets for years and years and years. And 42 teams in all those cities, just the way that's played out. The team cheats to win the World Series and not one player gets punished for it. What happened with the Red Sox? We might never know. Right? We might never really know what happened there. But the guy in charge is the same guy that was leading the cheating in the other place, right? Or one of them. So you didn't think they're doing it? I mean, come on. It's like every time you turn around, there's something else where you're just like, what's the deal here? And so now here we are again, where it's a fight over finances when the rest of us are all out here begging to go back to work and get our normal lives going back again. And it just seems like it's always about money. Well, I don't want to play because I might get sick, but if you give me more money, I'll do it. It's like, well, are you doing this for money or what? We'd all love to have more money right now, anytime, right? So I don't know, man. I feel like if baseball messes this up, that I think the game's in some trouble right now. I don't know that it would be the knockout blow, but the integrity of the game's in question because you got teams winning championships that are cheating, right? You've changed the baseball, everything about the game. Anytime something comes out, it's negative right now. And then this. So they could turn this into a positive, though. They get back and they figure out a way to make this happen, and they play. I mean, for God's sakes, we watched Tiger Woods with Peyton Manning, a retired, Papa John's spokesman, running around with Tom Brady, who's this 43-year-old quarterback playing for Tampa Bay. I mean, and Phil Mickelson. We watched them play golf in the rain. It wasn't even good golf, but we watched it, right? So if baseball could figure out a way to play some games, people are dying for the entertainment of it right now. I just wish that was the motivation, just to do the right thing and figure out the rest later.
I mean, Kevin, Mick and I especially are concerned with what goes on inside the white lines because we describe it. With you, because you're so tied in with the business of it and you know the power brokers of the game. But by and large, the vast majority of the people with the money, the power, everything like that, they're in this because they love it, because they're big baseball fans at their heart. So they can't be happy with what they're seeing.
You know, when I chat with some people on the major league side, I think there's kind of a disconnect between the commissioner's office and team management, not necessarily owners, because you're right. You realize soon enough there's Major League Baseball front offices, especially at the top, interestingly, is filled with people who just love baseball, love being at the ballpark, love the game experience, and work awfully hard to present that great baseball experience. And sometimes the commissioner's office doesn't seem as committed to that as much as team owners are, in my opinion. And that's something where and we talked about this before, that's where the NFL really came through with the draft, because you could argue the same thing about Roger Goodell in that draft, man. He was like the nicest guy on the face of the earth, chatting with and changing clothes and, you know, handling the draft so well. I just can't imagine Rob Manfred doing the same thing.
Well, Goodell learned, though. Sorry, Jesse. Goodell learned because, you know, he had some really bad times too and wasn't very popular as commissioner. But he has knocked it out of the park through this whole experience. And I hope that, you know, Rob Manfred is able to eventually figure it out, because so far, I mean, I give the guy an F- for his time as commissioner. You know, it's like, and I don't blame the owners. You know, I mean, look, this is the guy that got hired. There, you know, not everyone was on board, but he got the job, and now you're kind of stuck with him. You know, and it's like maybe he'll figure it out. But then every time I say that, the next thing comes out that this guy's involved in, and you're like, you know, what the beep? I mean, really, like, you know, just like what are you kidding me? And what's funny about leadership is it sometimes when you're in the middle of this, and this is how I feel about the owners, like they're kind of like you're this is your guy, you picked him, and you got to stand behind this guy, right? Because he's the guy you picked and everybody picked him, and you lose focus on when the rest of us are telling you that this guy stinks. We're telling you that because we care too, right? And I feel like it's kind of like they're like you know, we're dug in behind this guy. The sooner they get rid of this guy, the better off the game's going to be if he can't get it figured out. And I give Goodell a lot of credit because not even close to as bad as what we got right now with Manfred, but it wasn't very good. And when you had the work that when David Stern was commissioner of the NBA, he did the best job you could ever do, right? People complained about Bud Selig. I didn't. I always liked Bud. And now, you know, I need one of those "Don't blame me. I like Bud Selig" stickers. Like I said it the whole time. The guy he did a good job. Cared about the game. I don't feel like Manfred cares about the game. I feel like he's a crusader for like progressive baseball 101. That all these like ideas that these guys sit around and talk about. You know, hey, you know what would be great? What if we did this? We'll make the base bigger. What if we took this away? What if we leave the game alone? We've been playing it like this a long time, and it's had a lot of success. You know, maybe cut down on the commercials, make it a little bit faster, but it's not the speed of the game that's made the game worse. You know, like how long it is. Like you guys say that, but it's not. It's the quality of the game. Make the game better. Make the quality of the game better. Have better players playing it, and people like it. You know, it's like where we are right now. It's scary because I don't blame the owners. I just think like, hey, these guys, this is who we hired. We're going to stick by them. But I hope that eventually they'll pay attention to us and either, you know, muzzle this guy. This is a guy that when the World Series champion team got caught cheating, said, oh, it doesn't matter. The trophy's just a piece of metal. If I'm owning one of the teams, if I'm Tom Ricketts, I'm on the phone the next day with with the rest of the owners that I'm friends with, and I'm going, hey, let's fire this guy. Let's get him out of there. And I don't know if that happened. I'm sure some of the owners felt that way. But in the world where we need a George Steinbrenner, we just don't have one right now, because as much as people didn't like George, I can guarantee that he'd be one of those guys that'd be like, this dude, we need to Billy Martin this guy right now. Wish that we would.
Yeah, they made their choice to go with the labor attorney for their commissioner. And, you know, you can't have it both ways. I mean, Goodell's an attorney, labor attorney, but he learned. I'm not even sure if, I'm sure he's a lawyer, but he's also an NBA fan. You know, he stands out as an NBA fan. And Gary Bettman's sort of softened up too, you know, labor negotiator, now more a cheerleader for the league. And in this day and age, that role's so tremendously important. No one ever questioned Bud Selig loved baseball. Not a single person. And right now, you don't have that passion in baseball on a public stage, because everything's so centered in the commissioner's office, and they're not talking. They're not making speeches. They're not chatting with Tony Clark in public. And so those faces are really lost in this whole decision-making process.
Guys, we're out of time, unfortunately. So we've got a lot to talk about next week, and who knows what kind of news is going to break. But on that note, thank you both very much.
Thank you. We'll see you next week.
Yeah. Hey, thank you. Give you guys a quick look at the Bay House and Beloit here. That's my view right there across the street. Good to have view. Got American in this part of it, but you know, you can see in there. It's kind of pretty cool place. So there you go. I'll be writing my book and look forward to talking to you guys next week.
All right, Mick Gillispie, Kevin Reichard. I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler. Go to ballparkdigest.com. This has been the Ballpark Digest Broadcaster Chat.